Welcome to the Connecting with DZ video series. Our next topic is networking. We all know how the power of a robust professional network can serve us well. Arguably, today's guest has one of the largest professional networks of all time. The reach of the people DZ has influenced is in the thousands. Today we have a discussion with DZ about his approach to connecting with others.
DZ, I feel like every time you and I talk, it comes from this idea of you genuinely want to know me and to get my thoughts on a topic. How do you create that environment with the people you're interacting with?
Well, it comes kind of natural to me, I think. I'm always interested in what people are doing. I don't spend any time or much time watching the news or anything like that. Where I get the important information is talking to people and what they're living in, going through. And then to get to that, you always got to know a little bit about them personally. So I try to engage, find out, their past, where'd they go to school, those kinds of sort of foundational thing. Did you do a residency where, if it's a pharmacy related thing? And then, always some question will come to mind that you can ask them and say, so tell me what you do with your day. How does it go? Then once you get past that, then the conversation takes on, a life of its own.
So you have this large network. How do you keep track of those people in your network, and how do you try to remind yourself to connect with them or keep that going?
Yeah, so there's kind of two parts to that. One is sort of an organized list that I know I want to stay in touch with, and then the other is sort of serendipity. They pop up, and once they happen, maybe this should be worth keeping going. So then, you kind of file it away, and if it's supposed to be, it seems to reoccur. And so there's two modes, I think, not really systematic. There's some people that are of the same generation that I do, that have had same experience, like ASHP past presidents and some of those. We'll always want to stay connected with them. Always find out what's going on. And then there's always the new and emerging one, like the young resident groups, the admin residents, especially, my area of interest. They keep kind of forming, they come and go, and so it's not a static thing. There's no hard list that I say I must do every month, but something happens almost every day that you want to connect with somebody. And especially where I live here in northern Wisconsin in the wintertime, it's pretty...
To that regard though, it seems like the more your career expands, the older you get, the busier you get, and it can be harder to keep connections with people even when you want to. So how much work needs to go into maintaining connections? And can you give an example of a group that you maybe, or an individual you routinely connect with, and how that works?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a lot of work. Scheduling sometime, because, I like being out and about. So, sometimes connecting their schedule with my schedule is a little bit difficult. But it's never been a burden for me. If somebody's got time and willing to talk to me, I'm always pretty available and make time to do it. So to me, it's rewarding because I always get insight every encounter that's helpful to me. And I like the virtual world because when you talk to a person virtually, you always get to sort of a little deeper level on issues, not just, how's the weather, how did the deer hunting season go, the kind of stuff that's kind of cursory.
So you kind of have this innate curiosity in other people that I think really makes people feel connected to you. That seems to come naturally to you. Do you have advice for people that maybe that doesn't come naturally, or particularly for young leaders who, maybe going to a conference and trying to meet people for the first time? How would you encourage them to be curious?
Yeah. Well, don't be shy about going up and talking to people. Just because somebody has a title as an officer in an association, or you have a perception that they're some highfalutin or other, they may want to talk to you just as much as you to them. So it's a matter of how you develop a comfort level. And as I mentioned, I think the key is always find out what do you do, and what's on your mind, those kind of things. I think people like to exchange information. So a person may be of a different generation, or may have had a different series in terms of association leadership roles. don't let that hold you back from going up, talking to them, and say, hey, I'm so-and-so from this area, this is my job, tell me about X, Y, and Z. And it's a little bit of an art thing, you know, sometimes you muck up, you know, things don't go the way you plan. Don't let that discourage you, just go back and keep trying if it's of interest. But I think people, we get too locked in. You mentioned at one point, you know, people doing all of the text and the electronics and stuff, and they miss the personal stuff by that, you know, and it is very easy to do. I find myself kind of struggling with it sometimes. So I make a conscious point, put the thing away when I'm out with people and just to connect with the people.
One of those places has been on airplanes. It's been often said nobody should get sat next to DZ on a plane. Who knows where that time would go? Where do you think that comes from? And do you have any times you've met some interesting people on a plane?
Oh yeah, most planes. The issue is always when I sit down, should I talk to them or not? And then once I make the decision, maybe they got something of interest, I do that. And I met some people on a plane at my first assessment. They're too good to talk to anybody, and it was the most delightful discussions. I'll give you an example. One was an anchor newscaster and was coming from an interview at another city. And I looked at that person, I said, she wouldn't talk to anybody. Ended up sitting next to her, farm girl from Minnesota, UW graduate. And so we hit it off. We had a 2-hour discussion on how she puts together a newscast as an anchor person and gave me all sorts of pearls. So you just never know. She gave me her email. We stayed in touch for a year afterwards. So, and it happens a lot. The critical thing is if should I or shouldn't I kind of open the discussion. And sometimes you know right away, this isn't going to work. So then you get out your iPad or your book and read.
Time with leaders like DZ should not just be informational and inspirational. It should also bring joy. So DZ, one last question for you. Do you prefer to associate with people who think the way you do, or do you prefer to associate with people who think in other ways?
Well, both. You know, it's always good to kind of connect with people that you're comfortable with. But no, I'd like to talk to anybody that's willing to talk to me because they all come from a different perspective. They have a different path, different experiences, and different insight. It becomes a little challenging not to get distracted and want to focus on your area. But, you know, talk to somebody about religion, learn something completely new. Sat next to an engineer one night, his job was to connect worldwide NASA, bringing up new programs. So totally different environment. So just kind of a new environment. I have been accused about being a little bit too curious on everything ever since I was a kid. So I think that's, you know, there is some truth to, you may not want to sit next to me on a plane.
But you can always learn something important and
yeah,
you know.
a different way of thinking, you know, a different way of thinking.